Nobody expected what happened that day at Buckingham Palace. People came to see a royal ceremony. They expected perfect marching, quiet guards, and nothing more. But what they saw instead left them speechless. A single moment, a single act by a royal guard changed everything. And at the center of it all was a little boy in a wheelchair. And a soldier who wasn't supposed to move. It was a bright summer day in London. The sun was shining and the sky was blue with only a few clouds, floating slowly. The white stone of Buckingham Palace looked like it was glowing under the warm sun. Tourists had gathered in front of the tall black gates, waiting for the famous changing of the guard to begin. There was a loud mix of sounds, people chatting in different languages. Camera clicks, children laughing, and the occasional whistle from a nearby traffic officer. Families, couples, and tour groups lined the streets. Pressed behind metal barriers, in the middle of all that noise and excitement, sat a small boy named Liam. He was only 9 years old, and he was in a wheelchair. His hands rested tightly on the armrests. His small fingers clutched a folded British flag, and his eyes sparkled with hope. Liam's dream was simple. He wanted to see a real royal guard up close. He had always loved soldiers, especially the ones in red coats and tall black hats. He played with toy soldiers at home and read books about them with his mom. He even practiced standing still like a guard, pretending not to blink, just like the real ones did. This was his big moment. His mother, a gentle woman with kind eyes, stood behind him. She placed a loving hand on Liam's shoulder. She had saved money for months just to bring him to London. This was his special day, and she wanted him to remember it forever. But things didn't go as planned. The crowd grew thicker. People pushed forward to get a better look. They leaned over the barriers, veiled up their phones, and blocked each other's view. For someone standing tall, it wasn't too hard to catch a glimpse. But for Liam, who was sitting much lower, everything became harder to see. He tried to peek through the forest of legs around him. He shifted in his seat and raised his chin. But all he could see were people's backs, bags, and elbows. His mother asked politely, "Excuse me, could you let my son see? He's in a wheelchair." Some nodded and stepped aside, but others didn't care. And then the worst person in the crowd showed up. A man with a large camera bag shoved through the people like he owned the place. Was tall, had dark sunglasses, and spoke loudly. "Move. I need to get the perfect shot," he shouted. When he reached Liam and his mother, he frowned and pointed. "Seriously? You're in the way," he said. The mother stayed calm. "Sir, my son can't move easily. He just wants to see the guard." The man scoffed. "Then lift him up or something." "I didn't come all the way here to stand behind a wheelchair." People around them heard what he said. Some looked shocked. A teenage girl standing nearby began recording with her phone. The man continued talking loudly. "These guards are boring anyway. Just stand there and stare. Like robots." Liam looked down. He stopped smiling. He gripped the little flag in his hand tighter and tried to stay strong. But his eyes were starting to shine with tears. The man didn't stop. He leaned down near Liam and said, "Look, kid, this is all they do, stand like this." Then he made a silly face and stood stiffly, mocking the royal guards. Liam turned away, his face red with embarrassment. That's when it happened. The man suddenly kicked the front wheel of Liam's chair. It wasn't hard, but it was enough. Enough to shake the wheelchair. Enough to scare Liam. Enough to silence the crowd. Liam gasped. His mother rushed to grab the chair. "Please stop," she cried out. But the man just laughed and shrugged. People in the crowd started whispering. Others stared in disbelief. Some looked angry but didn't know what to do. This was not what they came to see. And just a few feet away, standing tall in his bright red coat and shiny black boots, was one of the royal guards. He stood perfectly still, facing forward. His hat shaded his eyes. His rifle rested against his shoulder. He didn't move. He wasn't supposed to. Royal guards never move, not unless ordered. Not unless there's danger. But then something changed. The guard turned his head, only slightly but enough for everyone to see. People gasped. Did he just move? Someone whispered. Liam looked up. The guard was staring straight at him, straight at the man who kicked his chair. The man didn't notice. He was still talking, but then, in one sudden move, the royal guard stepped off his post. His boots struck the ground with a loud snap. Then, too, he marched directly toward Liam. The crowd froze. Phones lifted. No one made a sound. The man finally turned and saw the guard coming. His mouth opened. His face turned pale. He took a step back. The guard stopped. Right between Liam and the man, everyone was holding their breath. What would the soldier do? Would he speak? Would he arrest the man? Would the palace punish him for breaking the rules? One knew. And then the guard raised one gloved hand. He held it up in front of the man like a shield. A clear message: stop, do not come any closer. The crowd stood still. Liam looked up, eyes wide. His heart pounded. Something incredible had just started. And no one, not even the soldier, knew how far it would go. Most people had never seen anything like it before. A royal guard had just stepped off his post. He wasn't supposed to move. He wasn't supposed to speak. But now here he was, standing between a rude man and a scared little boy in a wheelchair. And the crowd, silent, waiting, wondering what could happen next. The tall soldier stood like a wall in front of Liam and his mother. His red uniform was bright in the sunlight. His white gloves looked almost too clean, and his black boots were shining. He didn't say a word. But his message was clear. He had broken tradition. Royal guards are trained not to react. They must stay still no matter what happens around them. That's the rule. That's the job. But this guard had seen something he couldn't ignore. He had seen a helpless child being mocked and hurt. Liam looked up at the soldier. He had never been this close to a royal guard before. His hands still gripped the arms of his wheelchair tightly. The small flag in his lap had fallen sideways, half slipping off his knee. He didn't reach for it, couldn't look away from the guard. The rude man, now standing a few feet back, was quiet for once. He seemed unsure of what to do. His loud voice was gone. His hands hung by his sides. Tried to laugh it off. Okay, he muttered. I didn't mean anything. Okay. Nobody believed him. No one in the crowd moved. Some people were holding phones. Others had their hands over their mouths. A few even had tears in their eyes. Something special was happening, and they could feel it. Then the guard did something even more surprising. He took another step. Forwards, just one, but enough to make the man flinch. Then, slowly, carefully, he turned back toward Liam, and he knelt down. Gasps echoed through the crowd. A royal guard had dropped to one knee on duty in full uniform. In front of a child. It had never happened before. Not like this. The gravel crunched softly under the guard's knee. His rifle stayed firmly in one hand, but his other hand reached out and gently rested on the side of Liam's wheelchair. It was a soft, respectful touch. Not too much, not too little, but just enough to make Liam feel safe. The boy's eyes filled with tears. Not from fear, but from something else. A feeling he couldn't explain. Like his heart was warm and full at the same time. The soldier leaned in slightly and spoke. His voice was deep but gentle. Are you all right, young man? He asked. Liam didn't speak right away. His mouth opened, but no sound came. He only nodded. His throat felt tight. His mother, standing behind him, had her hand over her heart. Her eyes were wet. She whispered softly, "Thank you." The guard gave a very small nod. Just enough for her to notice. The rude man behind them took another step back, still trying to act like it was no big deal. It's not like I hurt him, he mumbled. You people are overreacting. A few people turned toward him with angry eyes. One woman in the crowd whispered, he should be ashamed. Then something else happened. Another royal guard approached. He looked older, maybe a higher rank. He wore the same red coat and tall black hat. His steps were sharp and perfect. The crowd held its breath again. Would this second guard scold the first one? Would he report him? The kneeling guard stood up slowly. He didn't speak, stood tall, shoulders straight, ready for whatever came next. The two guards looked at each other just for a second. And then the second guard gave a very small bow of his head. No anger, no punishment, just respect. Then, without a word, he turned and made a space by the barrier. A space just big enough for Liam's wheelchair to roll. Forward, the first guard gently placed a hand on the back of Liam's chair and guided him forward. Step by step, slowly, carefully, until Liam had the perfect view. The crowd began to clap softly. It was not loud. It was not wild. It was a gentle, warm wave of applause. A way to say thank you. The palace staff didn't stop it, even the camera. Phones weren't the center of attention. All eyes were on Liam Dot and the brave soldier who chose kindness over rules. Liam sat quietly. His heart felt full. The sun hit his face, and for the first time that day, he could see everything clearly. The gates, the guards, the ceremony beginning in front of him. His mother knelt beside him, brushing a tear from his cheek. "You did it," she whispered. "You saw your guard." Liam nodded. But it wasn't just that. He had been seen to Dot not as a boy in a wheelchair, but as someone who mattered. The rude man quietly slipped away through the crowd. People didn't stop him. He didn't need to. His part in the story was over. The focus had shifted. Now it was about something bigger. About a soldier who stood tall, not because of his uniform, but because of his heart. And the crowd would never forget it. Not ever. Everyone thought the moment was over. The royal guard had stepped away from his post. He had knelt beside a boy in a wheelchair, had spoken to him with kindness, and helped him move forward to see the ceremony better. The crowd had clapped softly. The rude man had walked away. It felt like the perfect ending, but it wasn't the end. Something even more surprising was still waiting to happen. Something no one could have guessed. Because while Liam sat quietly, watching the changing of the guard for the first time in his life, someone important was watching him too. It all started with a quiet whisper through the crowd. "Is that an officer coming from the palace?" People turned their heads. A man in a black suit and gold-trimmed tie was walking toward the front. He wore a badge on his chest. His steps were quick, serious. He wasn't smiling. Behind him were two more guards, not the ones in red, but palace security. They weren't part of the show. They were part of the system that made sure everything ran smoothly and nothing went wrong. Liam's mother noticed them too. Her hands tightened on the back of Liam's chair. The royal guard who had knelt beside Liam now stood beside him again. Still silent, still strong. But he saw the man coming too. For a second, a strange worry filled the air. Was the guard about to be punished? Did someone report what he did? Was the palace unhappy that he broke protocol? No one knew. The suited man reached the front. He stopped a few feet away from Liam. He looked at the guard, then at the crowd, and finally at the boy in the chair. The guard stood straight. Liam held his breath. Then the man spoke clearly. "Are you Master Liam?" Liam blinked. "Me." "Yes." The man said gently, his voice much softer now. "I believe you had a very special moment with our guard here today." Liam looked up at the soldier beside him. The guard didn't speak, but gave the tiniest nod. "Yes, sir," Liam said, his voice quiet. The suited man smiled. "We've been informed of what happened. And I must say it moved many of us inside the palace." People in the crowd leaned. In their phones were still raised, but now their faces were full of curiosity. The man continued. "The royal family is not present at the moment, but we believe they would have wanted something done in their name." Liam's mother gasped softly. The man turned to the guard and nodded. "You may step back now, soldier. Thank you for your service." The guard paused for a moment. Then he stepped back, returning slowly to his original post. His posture became stiff again. His face became unreadable. But his eyes, they watched Liam Dot. Then the palace official bent down to Liam's level. "Would you like a private view, young sir?" he asked kindly. Liam's eyes widened. "A private view?" "Yes," the man said with a kind smile. "We would like to invite you behind the barrier. You and your mother." Liam's mouth opened, but he couldn't find words. His mother asked carefully, "Are you sure it's allowed?" The man replied, "It is today. Just this once." The crowd didn't complain. In fact, they started clapping again, louder this time. Smiles spread across faces. Some people wiped their eyes. Liam was gently rolled past the barrier. Security. Guards held it open just for him. His mother walked beside him, holding back tears. Now, instead of being behind the crowd, Liam was in front of everyone. He was placed just a few steps from where the guards were marching. The sound of boots on gravel filled the space. The rhythm was perfect. The uniforms were flawless. Liam could see every detail: the shine on the buttons, the neat folds of the red coats, even the polished black leather of the rifles. He sat there, amazed. For a few minutes, nothing else in the world mattered. The suited man stood to the side, watching with a proud expression. He whispered something into a radio. Then, without warning, a small group of soldiers changed direction. They turned and marched toward Liam Dot. The crowd held their breath again. The lead soldier stopped directly in front of Liam. He gave a sharp salute. Then he reached into a small pouch and pulled out something unexpected: a royal pin. He bent down and gently pinned it to Liam's shirt for courage and spirit. He said. Liam looked down at the pin, then up at the soldier. "Thank you," he whispered. The soldier saluted again and turned back, marching away with perfect steps. The crowd cheered. Real cheering now, real emotion. People clapped loudly. Some even shouted, "Well done," and "Bravo." Liam smiled for the first time that day without fear. His hands shook as he touched the pin. His mother knelt beside him and hugged him tight. "You're so brave," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, Mom." He was brave too, he said, looking toward the first guard still standing far behind them. The guard didn't move, but if anyone looked closely, they might have seen it: a small smile hiding at the corner of his lips. Everyone believed the day had already reached its most beautiful moment. But something else, quiet and powerful, was still waiting to happen. It wasn't about medals or marching anymore. It wasn't about ceremony or cameras. It was about the quiet after the storm. About the feeling that stays in your heart long after the crowd has gone home. Liam had just received a royal pin. A soldier had marched forward, saluted him, and handed it over for courage and spirit. The crowd had clapped and cheered. His mother had hugged him tightly. And a little boy in a wheelchair, who once could barely see past the legs of strangers, now sat where the Queen's guards had stood. But it wasn't over, because just as Liam thought the ceremony was finished, one more figure appeared from inside the palace gates. He wasn't in red. He wasn't in black. He wasn't wearing a royal uniform. He wore a soft blue suit with a pin on the pocket and a leather folder in one hand. He walked with quiet purpose, heading straight toward Liam and his mother. Some people in the crowd whispered, "Who is he?" Others leaned forward. A palace staff member stepped up to Liam's mother. "Ma'am, this gentleman is from the royal office. He would like to speak to you and Liam if that's all right." She nodded quickly, holding Liam's hand tightly. The man stopped in front of them and gave a polite bow. "Master Liam," he said kindly, "we've been watching from inside. We saw what happened, and we saw how brave you were today. Her Royal Highness is currently not in residence. But if she had been, I believe she would have said this herself." He slowly opened the folder. Inside was a small envelope sealed with the royal crest. He handed it to Liam. Liam looked down at the envelope, unsure what to do. "Is this for me?" he asked. The man smiled. "Yes, it is yours." Liam's fingers carefully opened it. Inside was a short letter, written in neat, graceful handwriting. The message was simple, but powerful. To young Liam, you reminded us all today that bravery does not always wear a uniform. Warmest wishes, Buckingham Palace. Liam stared at the note. His eyes blinked quickly to stop the tears. His mother put her hand over her mouth, unable to speak. She looked down at her son, and her eyes said everything: pride, love, and pure wonder. The man in the suit gently added, "You'll also receive a copy sent to your home. You and your mother will always have this moment to remember." Liam didn't know what to say. He looked around at the people still standing, still watching, still smiling. He looked back toward the guard, the first one. The one who had broken every rule to protect him. The guard was still standing at his post. His face was calm, still unreadable. But Liam had an idea. He looked up at his mother and whispered, "Can I go thank him?" She smiled and nodded. "Yes, you can." Palace staff helped Liam move his wheelchair slowly toward the front, just a few meters from the guard. The crowd stayed quiet, almost like they were holding their breath. Liam looked up at the tall man in red. The black bearskin hat still shaded his eyes, but Liam knew he could hear him. "Sir." Liam said softly, "Thank you for helping me. You're not just a guard, you're my hero." The guard didn't speak. He didn't smile. But after a few long seconds, he did something nobody expected. With a slow, respectful motion, so small it almost didn't seem real, he tapped his boot once against the gravel. It was a soldier's silent way of saying, "You're welcome." The crowd clapped again, soft but full of emotion. Then Liam turned back toward his mother. "I'm ready now," he said. "Let's go." And with that, the palace staff helped guide them gently back out through the barrier, past the rows of tourists and cameras, back into the real world. But something had changed. The people weren't just looking at guards anymore. They were looking at each other, thinking about kindness, about courage, about how one moment of compassion could change someone's entire world. Liam didn't need the front row seat anymore. He had already lived the story of a lifetime. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Liam sat on the edge of his hotel bed. He still held the envelope with the royal seal. The pin was on his shirt, and the letter was folded carefully in his lap. His mother sat beside him. "Do you want to frame it when we get home?" she asked softly. Liam nodded. Yes. He looked out the window at the soft pink sky above London. "I'm never going to forget this, Mom. Not ever." She brushed his hair back. "Me neither." Then he added one more thing. "Can I write a letter back?" She smiled. "Of course. What will you say?" Liam thought for a moment. Then he said, "I'll tell them. Thank you for seeing me. For really seeing me." And with that, the little boy who once thought he was too small to be noticed had become the center of a story that touched thousands, maybe even millions. A story that started with silence and ended with something far louder: kindness.